I don't think my heart has ever broken as much as it did today, because that was like just the most ridiculous call ever.
Honestly, I could see Mariam going off, and I was just like, oh my God, this is for you like the worst thing that can happen. Do you think that what's been happening between Lewis and Max has kind of bled into everybody else's psyche? And everybody's thinking, oh shit, okay, if I'm battling someone, I need to make sure that I'm, doing this in the best way possible and maybe backing off a little bit. Hi guys, welcome back to On the Chicane. You're here with me, Paris, and my co-host Mariam, and we're going to talk to you today about the Turkish Grand Prix that's just finished. We're going to talk about all the things that have happened on track today, and all the things that have led up to this race. It was a pretty standard race, but I think there's still a couple of crazy moments that have happened, a few things that we can get into. So yeah, let's take it away. Let's maybe look back at the weekend as a whole and then get into the good parts, which is the race. Did you have any major thoughts about like practice and quali?
Not really. Practice, I think, was pretty standard. The issue this weekend that I think everyone was trying to figure out was what the weather was going to be. Was it going to be a wet race or not? Um, yeah, that was the main kind of thing that everyone was trying to establish. And obviously, quali yesterday, people were really trying to get in as much time as they could. Um,
You had a lot of people kind of doing the squirrel, didn't you? Like they weren't really staying on the track very well. So
no one was steady.
definitely
Like
dangerous.
everyone was spinning and just like, yeah, slipping and sliding all over the place. So it
Yeah.
was really interesting actually, but the Mercedes pace was looking strong. So
Compared to Red Bull yesterday,
yeah.
definitely.
And I feel like we've not seen that from Mercedes as a pair for a while.
Yeah.
It's quite nice to see that actually, that they were being quite dominant and steady,
Mm.
especially in comparison to Red Bull. So yeah, that was quite nice to see.
And
Um,
we knew as well that Hamilton was going to have that engine penalty, right? So it was
yeah,
also like, I guess I was personally rooting for Mercedes to do really well because we just wanted to minimize the impact of like Hamilton not ending up all the way at the back of the grid from not performing well in quali, right?
yeah, I do think this was a good race for them to take that penalty, because obviously he would have needed to take the fourth ice unit at some point. And I think this was a good call.
Yeah.
He obviously managed to claw his way towards the front of the pack. Um, so yeah, I think all in all, a pretty strong weekend from Mercedes.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Especially with them coming 1-2 in quali, and Bottas's performance today was amazing. Even Hamilton's performance actually, like he went for most of the race on the same set of tires, the same set of
Yeah.
tires. So that was pretty amazing to see. Um, so yeah, it was a steady race, but enjoyable at the same time. It wasn't a snooze fest.
Yeah, I was just saying I didn't fall asleep, so that's always a good sign.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't the most dramatic race that we've had this year, like at all. By far, it didn't kind of even necessarily live up to, for example, 2 weeks ago. Also, did you just feel like this 2 week break was a really long break? Because I felt like I really missed Formula One in the 2 weeks. It was a good amount of downtime. Not saying that I want any more of these triple headers that we keep having anywhere, but I felt the pangs of like, okay, is it race weekend yet? Is it race weekend? Um,
I
but
don't
yeah,
race weekends anymore, because my life is literally Formula One, Monday to
yeah,
Friday. So no.
you need the break.
But yeah.
But compared, if you compare the race 2 weeks ago to this race, it had a lot of similarities in the fact that it was like a damp race on the intermediates and stuff like that. But I think the excitement, we had a lot more excitement last race. This one was a bit more steady. The opening laps had a little bit of drama, but not too much. And then it was pretty much just like get on with it until the tires become an issue or something changes on track. And I think there was always this kind of feeling of waiting for something to change on track, but it never really did. So yeah, just to me, it was a pretty straightforward race. Like if I was going to rate out of 10, I'd be like, yeah, it's about 6 or a 7. It was decent.
Yeah.
I think what did make it interesting was Bottas's performance. He was really, really good. He was pretty strong. He led most of the race until Charles Leclerc had like a bit of time in the middle when he took over after Bottas pitted, and then Bottas came back out, overtook Charles again. So he kind of made it back to the front. Well, actually, sorry, Charles pitted. So there was a few little battles and stuff, but overall, I thought it was just like a pretty standard race.
So going back to the start of the race,
Hmm.
the opening lap it's a very short turn into turn 1 at Turkey. It's short like Spa. They don't really have much of a ground until they hit that first turn. And there wasn't much chaos. There wasn't any, well, there were some collisions because Gasly, who was sandwiched between Perez on one side and Alonso on the other, was literally in a really awkward position and kind of took his line and unfortunately understeered a little bit, ended up hitting Alonso, which I don't think was through his own kind of fault, but Gasly ended up getting a 5-second time penalty because of that, which I don't agree with. I don't think it was necessary. I think it was just a racing incident. Like Alonso span out, but we can do. And Alonso also got a 5-second time penalty for also I think hitting Schumacher or something, and then Schumacher went spinning, so that kind of equaled it. But I don't know. Sometimes
when I watched back the replay, I was just like, okay, maybe he could have been a tiny bit more aware of what was coming up on his side, but I feel like it's the first lap.
Yeah, exactly. Opening,
that there's going to be four people abreast or 3 people abreast. Like if I was a steward, I probably wouldn't have done anything, but I'm not a steward,
No, I know. It didn't make any sense to me, but
yeah. What a shame for Gasly, who had been he qualified like 6th again.
Yeah, I think he started something because
of the Hamilton penalty. Yeah. But like he literally has been doing so well this year. We keep saying it, like he's really doing well. So that kind of thing, we don't really want to see that happen to him, just because over something that could be classed as a racing incident and it could really mess up his race. I thought that was a bit like, there's bigger fish to fry here.
Definitely. But all in all, I think everyone was really good. In I say everyone, most people were really good in their on-track battles in keeping clean today. I don't think there was much stupidity. I mean, we had an issue with Mazepin and the blue flags. There was an issue between Sainz and Vettel where Sainz went to overtake Vettel, ended up clipping him slightly just as he took the lead. So that was a bit annoying. But let's talk about Perez and Hamilton, because they had a little on track.
I loved that.
Was so good. So clean, just good racing from both drivers.
And it was like a good number of corners. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't just like one corner, like it was like corner after corner after corner, and each one kept coming out ahead of the other. And I was surprised that Perez ended up winning that battle. I was actually really proud of him, but I love Hamilton. But I was really proud that like overall Checo hasn't had the best year when it comes to his position in finishing and stuff like that. Like you could argue that he's had a couple of good little battles and stuff, but generally he tends not to be seen as a person who's up there and like in the battles and being positioned where he needs to be positioned and all that kind of stuff. So I think from as a person who is not a Red Bull fan, if I was on Red Bull's side right now, I'd be like, yeah, well done, Checo, because you've kept Hamilton at bay, and the fact that he was able to do that was pretty amazing. On the flip side though, I was really disappointed for Hamilton that he couldn't make that stick and get that around. Do you think, in just because what you said just like kind of piqued my interest of like the fact that all the battles have become very clean and using that as a very prime example, do you think that what's been happening between Lewis and Max has kind of bled into everybody else's psyche, and everybody's thinking, oh shit, okay, if I'm battling someone, I need to make sure that I'm, doing this in the best way possible and maybe backing off a little bit?
I mean, maybe to an extent, because like the drivers, every week for them is a new learning curve, right? They learn
Yeah.
from each other, they learn from their own mistakes. And this is a sport that's constantly evolving, and the rules are always changing as well. So, and obviously, these guys are the best drivers in the world, but they're also up against a lot of competition. So they need to show that they deserve to be in their seats, because as soon as the season comes to an end, they're like, I mean, I know we've got most contracts in place for next year, but their seats are never 100% like theirs. And there's so much like new emerging talent. So I think to an extent, yeah, they're probably learning from what's going on around them. Uh,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like it's just each down to each individual driver to be the best that he possibly can be,
Mm.
and to know what he needs to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really interesting point that you just made, though.
Because I agreed with you. I see exactly what you mean. Like a lot of the battles that happened today, there were quite a few. You had let me see, I wrote down a couple. You had Signs going past a couple of people, you had Raikkonen overtaking Ricardo, there was battles between Alonso and Russell. So there was quite a lot going on track. Do you know what I mean? Like there were a lot of little battles in between. And I think the fact that a lot of them kept their noses clean is just a good sign of maybe the racing that we have to come. And if the younger drivers are perhaps learning from the battles that like Max and Lewis are having, when they get their prime time and they get to do all their battles and stuff, maybe we'll see a lot more that look like Perez and Hamilton's battle, where it's just that beautiful clean line racing. Even if they push someone wide, it's not like they send the other person spinning out and crashing into a wall. Do you know what I mean? So I think that could be quite interesting for the future. And then with regards to today, that just meant that Perez was probably man of the race or whatever for Red Bull, keeping
Yeah.
everybody in a good position.
Surprisingly, I feel like we didn't actually hear or see much from Verstappen, because
No.
he had kind of his own race.
Yeah, he's literally just there in the middle, wasn't he?
Yeah, just doing his own thing and trying to just obviously not strike out.
Yeah.
So yeah, you might be right. Maybe, well, I think Perez was, to be honest, Red Bull's driver of the day, because he was really good at fending off Hamilton, which was exactly what, like I tweeted on our account, like Bottas needs to take notice of this, because this is how you defend against a rival team. You don't just let them pass. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It was, yeah, great driving from Checo, definitely.
So a lot of the issues today as well came down to the tires. If you haven't watched our tire video, go back, find it. You'll learn all about why tires are so important. But one of the things was that the track today was pretty much damp for the entire time. So for the whole race, they were allowed to just use one type of tire. So they didn't have to pit and go onto a different tire as you normally do during the race to use two compounds. So they pretty much just all had the intermediates for the whole race. And there was this kind of like, who's going to trigger the bullet? Who's going to pull the trigger on whether or not to actually go into the pits and change to like a fresh intermediate tire? And all of the different teams kind of dealing with the idea of if there's going to be rain later on in the race, or if the race track is going to dry up and then they're going to need to change the slicks. So there was this kind of like massive thing hanging over all of the teams' heads and all of the strategists' heads. And it kind of pushed the pit stops a lot later into the race than what normally would happen. So that made it also like interesting on a strategy point of view. I think Ricardo was the first one to like pit and then test out the new inters, wasn't he?
Yeah. And everyone was like, "Oh, it's not doing that well," and then he slowly started to pick it up. but yeah, I mean, everyone was turning their inters into slicks essentially because they were going
Yeah.
on them for such a long run. Um, and then, do you know what? I don't even think I can talk about it.
Okay, I'm gonna prompt you because I feel like you need to like get it out. You need to get this thing out. In that whole thing of deciding to change to the inters, Ricardo goes out. Everybody can see how the new sets of inters are going, and a whole bunch of people come in. And one of those people that come in is Sebastian Vettel, who I think he was on the radio a couple of laps earlier saying, yes, I think it's going to dry out before the track is going to dry out before the end of the race. So I think they tried something different, as they say, just in case. You never know. People are turning their tires into slicks already. So they were like, let's just go onto the medium slicks and see what happens. What happened, Mariam? What happened?
Basically, Sebastian had, I mean, he literally was Bambi on ice. He came out and you could just tell straight away this was the wrong call. Everyone on social media was like, Sebastian's on slicks. Everyone else changing for enters. Like, okay, this is an interesting choice, interesting call. And
Yeah.
you could just see he was sliding all over the place. He couldn't maintain any kind of balance. It was awful. And then I think like the next lap he came in to switch back
Yeah.
and it dropped him all the way down. I think he was in the points and it
Mm.
dropped him down to like 19th or something. And I honestly, I don't I don't think my heart has ever broken as much as it did today because that was like just the most ridiculous call ever.
Honestly, I could just like I could see Mariam going off, and I was just like, oh my god, this is for you like the worst thing that could happen. I was just like, boy, Aston, you
My
guys,
heart.
I don't know what they were thinking. I actually have no idea what they were thinking because yes, Vettel might have been like the track is like drying up a little bit, and they say that if the track is drying, it's like the driver's call to say whether or not the track is drying. However, the team have all of the telemetry of the weather. They can literally see what all the other drivers are doing, and no other driver was thinking the same thing. So I feel like they should have been like to him, no, Sebastian, like this is not the right thing to do right now. Stay out on inters or come in and get fresh inters. That should have been it. Like there was no point that anybody else even sniffed at mediums or like any kind of slick tires. So I just didn't know what they were thinking. And that's a real shame for them. Like they really lost out on some major points.
Yeah, they really, really screwed up their own race there because
Yeah.
Lance luckily finished in the points. I think he finished P9. But like Seb, honestly, they literally screwed up their own race.
So badly.
Oh, yeah. I can't say too much more, but it was just
Shambolic.
shambolic is the right word. Yeah.
But on the other side of things, some people who did kind of get it right was Red Bull. They pitted, you know, like at a decent time, and then they got both drivers back out, and they both had like, I think one of them had a 2.1 pit stop. So Red Bull are back to their fighting pit stop pace. Everybody seems to have figured out the wheel guns now, and they know how to do it. So they're back down to 2.1 pit stops. But what then happened? So as most people pitted after Ricardo pitted first, you ended up having three people on the track who had not pitted at all. So that was Leclerc, Hamilton, and Ocon. And Leclerc and Hamilton were, I want to say, first and second,
Something like that, yeah.
or maybe second and third. I can't think. But they were basically at the very front of the pack, and they were kind of like,
Leclerc was leading.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, Leclerc was doing super, super well. And I think it just occurred to him, or did you saw the moment where it kind of occurred to him, he was like, shit, if we stay out on these tires, I might actually win. And he like calls back the garage and he's like, can we last to the end on these tires? So at first they were saying yeah. And he seemed so excited. And I was like, cool, kind of happy for him. I didn't mind. As long as Verstappen's not winning, I don't care. Oh, sorry, hold on. Leclerc was first. I think Verstappen was still second, and then Hamilton was behind Perez. So that was when Perez and Hamilton were kind of fighting. So Hamilton was fourth and Perez was third. But yeah, so Leclerc's kind of realized, shit, if I stay here, I could win, not just get a podium, I could actually win. And he stays out for a while, but then in the end, he ends up like pitting because I think his tires were like falling off or something. So he ends up going like much further back. But that was quite a funny moment, I thought, where he clocked onto the fact that he could have won.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. And to be fair, like considering their pace today, I do think it was a bit of a just a wrong timing kind of call from Ferrari because yeah, Leclerc would have had a really good chance to be on the podium, to be honest, I think. But he ended up finishing just outside the podium in fourth. So yeah, kind of gutted for him. But I don't know. I just think it looked so good for both Lewis and Leclerc where they were staying out for so long. And then I just think the timing of calling them both in screwed up their own races because both of them looked like they could have finished on the podium, but they both literally just finished just outside, so fourth and fifth. And it's a shame because had they maybe come in a little bit sooner, definitely not later, but I think if they'd come in sooner, they could have maybe fought for their podium positions a bit more. So
do you think, I mean, I feel like Leclerc, if he had come in maybe a bit sooner, he probably could have battled back to third, possibly. I think that would have really depended on how well, and Perez seemed to be really on form today, so that would have depended on how well Perez kind of like battled him. I think Bottas and Verstappen kind of had first and second nailed. They were, quite far ahead of everybody else, and nobody was really, once they kind of gained back those positions, nobody was really getting back to them. But Hamilton, do you think that they should have listened to Hamilton and left him out? Knowing what we know now, with hindsight, like the track didn't dry up towards the end of the race, and for a while he was lapping quite well. Do you think they should have left him out, or do you think they were right to bring him in? Do you think he should have come in earlier?
Do you know what? It's always kind of hard to say because how often do we ever see a race like that where a driver goes from start to finish on the same set of tires? We never see that, right? And his performance was looking so strong on that same set. So on the one hand, I'm kind of like, maybe, but then that is kind of a risk it all kind of move because if your tires don't last, he still had a good few. It was more than 10 laps left, I think.
I think it was about that
round. So that's a really long distance for you to try and maintain those tires which you've been going on since the first lap. So I think it's such a risky move to be like, I'm going to stay on these. If it pulled it off, that would have been a miracle. But at the same time, I do think at some point they would have had to call him in and he would have had to come and change. And like I say, I don't think it would have been worthwhile doing it any later than what he did. So I don't know. I think yes, the right call was to change the tires. I think potentially he probably should have come in a bit sooner.
Okay, interesting. I think he's gonna. I don't know if there's an answer to that really. Like you said, like it's something that they're gonna have to work out. But I think it would be really a good exercise for him and Mercedes to sit down and work it out and say, well, look, you were lapping at this amount. Verstappen, who was in front of you, was lapping at this amount. Perez, who was in front of you, was lapping at this amount. And actually, no, he came out behind Perez. So Verstappen was lapping at this amount. If you had stayed here, you would not have been able to catch Verstappen, and whoever was behind you would have caught you in this amount of time. And you were lapping the same as maybe like someone who was behind further down in the field. So we can know that this is what would have happened to you. And if you had pitted at this point, you would have been here. If you'd listened to us when we told you to come in before, but you pitted here, so look what happened. But I think that's something, because what struck me and what does kind of strike me when you take into account his decision at Sochi and just decisions he's made in the past, is that there is like a little bit of a combativeness between, well, I'm on the track and I know best, and well, I'm on the pit wall and I know best. And actually between the two of them, they, even if they have a different opinion, they need to be able to make sure both sides have the full facts in
Yeah.
the conversation. And I feel like there's not really like that dialogue that goes through when you, for example, take into account somebody else. Like, who was it? It was can't remember. There was one of the drivers on lap 28, he was like, the grip's starting to drop off. There's a dry line at turn 8. And it was like a useful conversation between the driver and the pit wall. So it was like very procedural, this is what the grip is, this is what turn it's like, no grip and stuff like that. Whereas I think Hamilton and Mercedes are starting to say stuff based on like feeling, and it's like, yo, no, you guys need to be doing this on data. Because one thing that then happened was Hamilton came out and he was pissed because he didn't know that he was coming out 2 positions behind, because that wasn't communicated to him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was quite interesting actually when he was told to box and he was like so calm and he was like, yeah, okay. I was like, but then I think the commentators made it clear that Lewis didn't know what position he was in when he was called in. So yeah, you're right. There is some sort of miscommunication happening, which I feel like we have seen for a while actually this year. And I don't know what's happening, but Mercedes are definitely losing their game, I think. And you can see the cracks under the pressure because they've never had this kind of pressure on them before. Ferrari tried for a while, and Red Bull are now really putting it on them. Yeah, they're crumbling a little bit, and it's just, I mean, we've got what, 7 races left this season. Hamilton is now 6 points behind Max. He went into this weekend with 2 points ahead, and he's now 6 points behind. And he's running out of time to try and keep that gap close, but also to stay ahead.
Yeah. So literally, I think he thought, I'm just going to be 1 point behind. It's okay. We've made a recovery drive from 11th. He thought he was going to be in 3rd, maybe 4th. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could see the mechanics in his head. It's like, okay, cool. We're not that bad. That there's points that we could make back up in like
in
Texas or like Mexico or whatever.
I think in a battle that's this tight between the two of them, where it's literally a matter of just a few points here and there every race, 6 points is quite a lot. Especially when you're getting to, like, we're literally in the last leg of the season now. So this is where it's kind of crunch time and they need to get their shit together essentially, because I'm sorry,
Red Bull are bringing it.
Verstappen is not winning. Yeah, okay. I'm not letting it happen.
Yeah. I definitely feel like there's just always a lot more pressure on Mercedes race to go well. Whereas Red Bull, like, they had an easy race today. Like we said, Verstappen was like, we didn't even hardly see him. He was just out there on his own, doing his own thing. It didn't really matter what he did. He was cool. Perez even had like a really good race. So yeah, there's a lot that Mercedes need to do to make sure that they kind of come back. Elsewhere on the field, Russell and Alonso were having a couple of battles, as I mentioned, toward the end. Didn't really get to see it because they didn't put it up on the screen, but Russell managed to stay ahead of Alonso and maintain 15th place. Tsunoda, who had a bit of a twitchy start, I think. He had a few wobbles. Kind of was just floating around 14th. Love to see him do a bit better. Ricciardo started at the back of the grid and finished in 13th, with Giovinazzi and Raikkonen, the 2 Alphas, overtaking him in the last couple of laps. So nothing amazing back there. Probably wished we could see Ricciardo kind of maybe like get into the points, but he didn't. Not much to say about that.
McLaren's race in general today was very
meh.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really hear much of Norris. I think he finished 7th.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really much going on for McLaren. It was just kind of this is the sitch.
Yeah. Did you see Norris's interview over the weekend where he was like, yeah, Lewis is going to definitely overtake me in the first few laps? And then Natalie Pinkham was like, why are you being so like sad about it? Like, you've got to stay positive. And he's like, nah, I'm just being a realist. Well, Lewis did overtake him, so he wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
Poor guy. But yeah, I think as well, Sainz also had a really good race. So the two Ferraris, I think, had a really good race. I mean, Leclerc obviously lost out a little bit and possibly could have done a little bit better. The Mercedes obviously had a good race. Bottas winning and doing really amazing. And then the Red Bulls had a really good race. Other than that, everybody had a pretty standard race. Any winners of the day for you?
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that question. My winner is definitely going to be Bottas. Like, I'm quite proud of him for not screwing that up. He he had a clean race, was very consistent, did what he needed to do, went out, got some decent points for the team. So yeah, he's going to be my winner. What about you?
I'm going to take this opportunity to say Checo is my winner of the day.
I knew it.
Of course. I don't get to say this very often, so I'm going to say it today. Last week it was Hamilton, today is Checo, my two guys. I get to say it. He had a really nice battle with Lewis, and he came out ahead. So yeah, definitely going to say Checo for my winner of the day. Loser of the day for you. I think I know who yours is going to be.
The love of my life, Sebastian Vettel.
I think we can say it's the whole Aston Martin strategy team on Vettel's side.
Yeah, I don't blame Vettel at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just no further comment.
I have to agree. I think that was just the biggest upset of the day. Like, that was unnecessary, and you can't get over that as a loser of the day. Sorry, babes.
No, you really can't. But anyway, we move on to the American Grand Prix in Austin, Texas, the Circuit of the Americas, in 2 weeks' time. Looking forward to that one. We haven't been to America in over 2 years, so that's going to be interesting. And it's always quite a fun race.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
And we have lots of American fans, so hi guys, we'll be on your time.
Yeah, we are going to be on your time.
So that's going to be pretty fun. I'm quite looking forward to that one as well.
Yeah.
In the meantime, what can everybody do to follow us?
So basically, guys, first of all, I'm just going to take this moment to apologize for how little I've been doing on Instagram. The content on there has been slacking. And it's literally just because I'm so busy, and I apologize. But I do have plans, and there are things kind of in the pipes, but it's kind of a slow progress kind of thing. But you can still check us out on Instagram. We're very active on Twitter. And obviously follow, like, share, subscribe, all of that with this video. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch you in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, guys.